Okay, I think we're ready to go get started. All right, so how many of you guys have seen me speak before? Or me and Allyn speak before? Okay, good. So my name is Kai Axford, and I am a manager of IT security services for Accretive Solutions. It's a IT security, well, it's a consulting firm. We do IT security testing and pen testing and facility breach exercises and all that kind of good stuff. And Allyn is with the FBI, special agent, whole deal. Anybody have any questions on what he does? Good. All right. So what we came to here to talk to you guys today about is just basically, it's called Trends in Cybercrime. We'll talk a little bit about what we see going on, but really what we want to do is spend some time talking about some actual cases that have actually happened to give you kind of an idea of what some of the big things are out there. And I'll be honest, you're coming here to expect all kinds of high-speed, cutting-edge stuff. A lot of this stuff's really not. You're going to see some old-school stuff that's still actually being used pretty regularly because it's effective. So we're going to kind of get into that. We do have some actual recordings from the criminals talking amongst themselves, then some of the things he actually did. You'll hear them talking. I did my best to remove pretty much all the profanity out of it, so that was not easy. Apparently nobody briefed them that I would actually be using these at Tech Ed when they did the recording. So we did our best to get that out of there. But we're going to get going here. All right. That's our email address, all that stuff you need to contact me or him. All right. So basically, we did our introductions. We're going to talk about the case study, the case of the little hacker, and who that is and what that's all about. We're going to do a little bit talk about the case of Ghost Exodus. By the way, not the real names. Shocking. I can never be a hacker because I can never come up with like a really cool name like that, I guess. We're going to talk about what else is out there, and then finally we'll take questions. Now, we got a lot to cover, so, you guys all know how the questions work. You've been at Tech Ed now for more than an hour. You know the microphones are in the middle, and all that good stuff. All right, so first thing we're going to talk about is this concept called swatting. Now, I should mention this. In my former job, I was in the Army, as was Special Agent Lynd, and I was in special operations, and we did a lot of, cool stuff you see on TV, the fast roping and the kicking in the doors and flashbangs and all that kind of good stuff. So to me, this is what swatting was, right? This is pretty much it. But they've actually recently added a new weapon to this. And we are still going to talk about that. That is very much important. Does anybody not have an understanding of what SWAT teams do? Because that's the 100 level class, right? Okay. But we're adding a new weapon. And that weapon is actually the phone. Okay, so what swatting, Wiki defines swatting as an attempt to trick an emergency service, such as 911, to dispatch an emergency response team. Okay? So let me explain what swatting is, and Allyn, you jump in here as well. It is when I call emergency services. I can spoof your number. Does everybody know how to spoof a phone number? You've all seen how this works, right? I can actually demonstrate it here if somebody wants me to show them how it actually works. So I can actually call your number, and the number that pops up on caller ID would be someone else. Pretty funny, right? You call your wife, you have it think it's her boss, it's great. You call your old teammate, you have them think it's another teammate, Matt, Keith. Tell them, hey, I'm buying dinner tonight, meet me here. Hey, okay, great. Right? So it works, it's great. It actually does show up the caller ID. Now, think about this for the bad guys doing this. I call up 911 and I spoof your number. Okay? So there I am. I don't look that good, but I call 911, I spoof your number. 911 answers the phone. Right? Dispatcher. And do they basically use caller ID at 911? This is the interactive part. Yeah, why do they do that? Look up your address, right? They have a location. Why don't they just wait till you tell them where you're at? Sometimes you can't. So they can pull up that information. They can get the number. They can pull up that number, pull up that information, figure out where the address is, right? So we call 911 dispatcher. 911 dispatcher, you hear this. They say something like, I have a police officer held hostage in my house, and I will kill him if I do not get money. What does the 911 dispatcher do at that point? She has your location, correct? So she calls these guys. Now, meanwhile, back at the house, You guys are sitting there playing Xbox with some girl we know you'll never ever really meet in real life. This is a great photo because you know she probably doesn't play Xbox. And all of a sudden, you get greeted with this. Which ends up to this, right?
One of the reasons that we're actually bringing this up, I mean, we're talking about trends, is it is a trend now that we're seeing real-world impacts from hackers. And we always saw this before, the hackers like, oh, it's just data going. Oh, it's just this going. Oh, it's intellectual property. Oh, it's not that big a deal. Oh, somebody's stealing, downloading movies. This is a real-world impact. And, I mean, we're going to talk about this, but there are real people hurt in this. At least one time, you know, hey, granddad answers the door thinking it's somebody else when the cops are knocking it down and thinks it's a home invasion and stands up to the cops. His arm got broken. Another time on this, the police are responding because they really think that there is a police officer being held hostage, and you'll hear that tape, and they're racing there and they get in a car accident and somebody's injured. I mean, this has real-world implications. We had people, flashbangs, you saw that grenade go in there. That actually can burn people. And all those things happened when these guys made those kinds of calls. And the question I always get, which I'm going to just stop it up front, is why would they do this? These particular group, because you cut them off with your car, and so they look up your driver's license and your plate and find you. Because the girl would not give them phone sex. I mean, these are the real reasons they did it. One of them did it because another person offered to give him Burger King $off coupons. I mean, this is a really weird and different mindset.
Absolutely. And again, remember, if a SWAT team is out responding to, it's like a false alarm, right? Somebody pulls a fire alarm in a building and there's no fire, and the fire department responds to that alarm, and then there's a real fire. Where's the fire department? Right? So think about these resources that these guys are tying up by doing stuff like this. So we're going to talk about the case of the little hacker. Now, this actually took place from 2002 on. A bunch of states. This is obviously, you got the FBI involved, right? This is not a small deal. Okay? This is not the local county sheriff having an issue. This is a big deal. The reason they get brought in is because it happens in multiple places. You can see the states where this was impacting, right? So your state actually might be up there. And so I'll let Allyn explain basically what these phone phreakers were essentially doing.
Okay, so these guys are basically, and most everybody here will know what IRC is, or be old enough like me to remember the old party lines where people used to all talk at one time, or you've seen at least the late night ad, a call for, companionship.
Nod your heads, you've all seen it, you know it.
So people would sit on these chat lines and just talk. And a lot of these were, there were purpose lines like, oh, we're going to talk about music, or we're going to talk about being blind. Some of these lines were set up for blind assistance or medical assistance. And what would happen is these guys would figure out that these lines were free to call in. And they want to have fun, so they're going to call into these lines for free and talk to each other and take over these lines. Everybody here has a phone, right? Everybody nod your head, everybody has a phone. How many people out there think you have IP phones? How many people think you have a regular landline, which is a regular just phone? Okay, everybody out there has an IP phone. I don't care what phone you have. Even if you have a regular landline going out to your switch outside your house, at that point it becomes an IP phone. So these guys are sitting there going, all that has to come through a switch, a PBX somewhere. I want to be in control of that line, and that's what a lot of it boils back to. I want to be in control. So now I can take over that PBX. I'm going to hack into that PBX and figure out the command codes for that. So I'm the admin. Just as I'd be an admin for a server, I'm now the admin for that PBX. And I can do whatever I want, and only the people I like can be on there. And if people don't do what I want, I'm going to kick them off. So they started that way, and then they said, well, now I've got a lot of interesting things. If I'm the admin on that PBX, I know what phone number these people are calling in from, because just like on IRC, nobody here is using their real name. They're all got some, nick they're using, for lack of a better term, and they're all pretending to be from somewhere else. So I have the real IP or the real phone number coming in. I know who they are. I can figure it out. And now I have power because I can look at you and say, I know your real identity. You better do what I want. It all comes back to having that power over other people. So that's where they started from.
Okay. So here's the guys we're talking about, right? So the first guy is this guy right here, Matthew Weigman, known as a little hacker, known as Silence. He was a minor at the time this took place. Mr. Lynd, Special Agent Lynd, actually got the opportunity to go meet him on more than one occasion. Couple times. You'll hear him talk on the phone. He does a lot of the calls. So you actually hear him do his little speech. He's great at, well, I'll tell you what, why don't you tell me a little bit about him, about some of the stuff you know about him, just, well, he's a smart kid.
He is very smart. Well, he's very technically savvy. I'm going to change that from smart. He was actually offered the opportunity to cooperate with us and instead decided to continue his crimes, which takes him out of the smart range, or at least the common sense range.
Technically adept.
But very technically adept. This guy, his hearing is so good, and if a lot of guys out there are ham radio operators or anything, he can actually tell the frequency of something by listening to it. So the old whistles that went at 2600 hertz and things, he could tell that. He actually demonstrated to us while we were there being able to tell the difference between a Verizon as a carrier and AT&T based on the carrier signal. He was able to hear somebody dial a phone number, even the auto dial that goes really quickly, memorize that phone number and basically redial it after that. He also had a very good ability to mimic other people's voices. Women, men, he could sound like either one, young kid, old person. So he could really, really be adept at socially engineering. And a lot of this you can see really is socially engineering. Back to, I'm mad at you, I know your phone number, I'm going to get you. Well, it doesn't always get to somebody, because now you have to get to the phone company and say, hey, that phone number, what's the billing address of that? Because a lot of us have cell phones now, right? Cell phone doesn't have a geographic address, but it's going to have a billing address. So how do we get that? Oh, we pretend to be another phone company employee by socially engineering and getting past that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, too. Like, this kid's blind. Right? He's a blind kid. So this is pretty, I mean, he's a great at what he does, right? So got this guy here, Michael Knight.
Stuart Rosoff.
Good old Stu.
Same thing. I mean, he's just really got good at basically threatening people. Again, all these guys, they would dumpster dive inside trash cans to find the manuals on how to use phones. They would know what the default password were for all the different switches. If anybody here works with telecoms at all, or even regular computers, we all know people sometimes forget to reset passwords. So they'd basically keep calling until they got it. War dialing until they could. This guy's one of the guys who actually made the phone calls. Guadalupe Martinez, he went by Wicked Wizard. He would call up, his favorite one was to call up and say, hey, I'm on drugs, I'm messed up, I accidentally shot my wife and kids. Send out somebody, but you better not send out the cops, because if you do, I'm going to shoot the cops. So now the cops are thinking there's somebody injured, and that this guy's got armed. I have an AK-47. Rosoff would like doing things like, again, all these things like that. But they didn't only do that. They would call and say, I'm committing suicide. I need to send out an ambulance. Rosoff did things like, I'm mad at you. You didn't give me phone sex. This is really, he did this. So I'm going to call Child Protective Services and report you for molesting your children and pretend to be your ex. So it looks like it shows up as your ex. That wouldn't be very nice. Go ahead and after Mr. Rosoff, after Mr. Martinez, we had Mr. Trowbridge. Mr. Trowbridge is one of those really evil debt collectors. He would call up and say, hi, I'm really the Fort Worth Police Department. You guys owe $100 to such and such credit reporting agency. And he would spoof his number to look like the Fort Worth Police Department. Unless you show up in the next hour, we're going to send a squad car and arrest you. So because of that, he had access to LexisNexis and other things like ChoicePoint. So if you got a phone number and you got a name, you can find out all sorts of things like who their relatives are, who else lives in that house, driver's licenses, tags of cars that are there. So when you call the cops and say, hi, I'm Kai Axford, and I live at XYZ, and I've just killed my wife, and they say, hey, now you can sit there and go, oh, I'm driving my blue Chevy. He doesn't have one, I'm just saying that, and I killed my wife, Janet, and that's not really his wife's name.
She appreciates that.
So it makes it a lot more real when you're doing that.
Right.
Next person, please.
Yep.
This is Mr. Ward. No, he's not dead. He's just drunk and passed out. He financed this. Mr. Ward ran a business. We all get those spam emails, leads for housing mortgages and things like that. Do you want to buy Cialis, all that? He ran a business that did that, made a lot of money doing that, and would basically pay the other people $2 or $3 grand at a pop to go after his enemies.
Let's be clear. This will be some of you guys later this evening, right here. Okay.
Mr. Nally, another person who's made the SWAT calls, he was most adept at trying to socially engineer things like, again, we know that you live in Dallas, but we're not sure exactly where. So he would start calling around to all the Pizza Huts in Dallas, pretending to be you, until he got one that would respond that, oh yeah, bring it out to my house, and I'm so drunk I can't remember the address, so what was it again? Or wait for them to say, oh, you want it at 1234 Main Street? Yeah, that's me. So, I mean, again, just socially engineering, nothing really particularly important on that. Miss Roberson, she basically used her powers for evil by basically just targeting people. She'd get mad at them on the party line. They'd hit on her and she'd want to get even. But she was actually a phone sex operator for a while. So she had a really good voice, so she could convince people to give her anything she wanted. So she'd get the information from them, what city they were in, their real names, things like that to help the fraud. So these party lines are all over the place. They're all connected. There's a company called Talkie out in Reno, Nevada. And they basically run all those servers out of there. So once you have the server that runs the chat line in New York, you also have the admin password for the server that runs the line out in California, that runs the line out in Seattle. And all these guys are all over the country, so they're happy to get everybody in on the same one. And the Jackie Donut's the one in Boston. And they would just basically get all these people on the same party lines and then, again, take admin access over them.
All right, so I call this part, let's make it real. So we're actually going to show you, I can't show you the address because the internet's down. We're going to play some of the audio for you guys. All right, so the first tape we have here is, I believe it's them on the chat line. Again, I cleaned this up as best I can. So if you hear anything drop out, hey man, there's a lot of silent parts in there. You know why. All right, so we're going to run off this laptop here so you guys can hear it.
09 hours Pacific Standard Time. Number dialed, area code 781. In Duxbury, Massachusetts.
Boston Loach, if you got some minutes to blow them with us. If you're into the adult hardcore sexual cruising scene, do not do it here. The phone company doesn't permit it. We set aside your room number is. Here in the lobby. For the live rooms, press 1. For the bulletin board. Live rooms. There's 9 rooms here. Just press 9.
4.
But you probably have good IDs, too, with that company, a bunch of them.
Who, with Verizon?
Yeah.
I've got 4 of them.
Yeah, so, it kind of like rules me out. I mean, you could pretty much do anything.
Hello?
Yep, they're all security ones.
The
Who are you?
Who are you, Piglet?
Morgan?
That one is flagged.
Oh, I'm not using that thing.
The IDs they're talking about are IDs of AT&T and Verizon operators, and they're trading those the same way as other people would trade admin logins and passwords on a regular server, because if you have a good ID for the AT&T operator, AT&T does actually a very good job on security for this, but if you've got the AT&T operator's name, the room number in the building he works in, his phone number, and you're making it look like it's him, you know his boss, you know his internal passwords and all that good stuff, they're going to think it's really you. When you call in and say, hi, I'm out in the field and I need this phone turned off because I'm servicing it.
And the guy talking right now, that's Stuart, right?
That's Stuart and Matt both.
I already tried. It's flagged. It's flagged. You can't use it.
Tried it, they won't do anything with it?
They said that, listen, you have to have your supervisor. You have to shut up, little girl, for a minute. Will you shut up for a minute? Retard. They said that you have to have your supervisor call down, and this conversation is over.
Yeah, right.
Oh, so you tried doing something with it to see if that actually flagged it?
Yeah, it's flagged. Nothing to do with you. It's something else.
Oh, okay, yeah. I'll teach you how to get those IDs if you want them. They're easy.
Why are you going to teach me anything? I've been doing some stuff that isn't so nice.
Well, I mean, it's not bothering me, to be totally honest with you, dude.
Well,
what's he going to teach you?
I'm going to teach Michael tricks of the trade.
Can you?
Yep.
The guy says he's going to teach him the tricks of the trade. That's
Little Hacker.
That's Little Hacker, right.
And he's basically talking about at that point, he has figured out, and again, we're talking the same stuff that you've seen everywhere else just being used on phones. He's war dialing into a telephone network call center, and he's calling up each one individually. So like, again, the PBX, our office is 972-559-5000. He's calling 5000, 5001, 5002, 5003, and waiting for some phone to say back, you have reached Special Agent Joe Blow, And then he's calling somewhere else and saying, hi, this is Special Agent Joe Blow from this. I've forgotten my password. Same stuff we see at work.
I don't know how to do that with Verizon. Yeah, I really don't. I never have.
Do what? What are you trying to do?
Get IDs. I can't do that.
You can't get IDs with Verizon. I can't.
Yeah. I don't take the time to keep calling in and stuff and doing that. I didn't do that with the other company.
I used to be able to do that, but now I'm retired, so.
Hello.
Yes, hi.
How are you?
I'm doing okay. My name is Michael Knight. Who are you?
I'm Laura.
Oh, hi.
Okay.
Why don't you just give me that phone number? That's all I want.
I'm not going to give it to you. I'm sorry.
That's all I want is that one number.
Ain't happening.
I'll give you the number.
She needs to, I don't want your number. She needs to be destroyed.
Yeah, what's your number, girl?
Hello?
Give it to him. I don't want it.
Let me fast forward this a little bit because I want to get to some of the part we're actually talking about.
I mean, I have no problem with it, but who cares? I don't care.
Nothing to do with it. Little actor did it. I'm staying
I
out
don't
of it.
do that stuff. That's illegal, man.
I'm staying out of it. Whatever you do, whatever you do.
Well, Michael, now will be president again. I want to back it up again.
I'm not messing with it.
No, seriously, somebody shut her phone off 10 o'clock this morning.
So this is the mother of one of the ladies, one of the daughter. Her daughter got her phone turned off. Right, so these guys basically got her number, like Allyn said, and they shut their phone off. So she's mad. The mom is calling into the party line now to basically try to yell at these guys for doing that.
By the way, to show the level of antisocial behavior these guys have, the daughter whose phone got shut off is 14, and she's mentally handicapped. And the reason they shut off her phone is they basically were trying to force her to give oral gratification over the phone, and she wouldn't do it and broke down in tears. And so this is how they're retaliating against her.
You old.
He had more than one phone.
April 16 East Main Street, apartment.
Hey, girl. Hey, are you her mom? Hey, is that her mom, dude?
Yeah,
it really is.
Hey, why don't you give me your number so I can call you? I'll help you turn it back on real quick.
Phone company is taking care of it right along with FBI. See?
Your
FBI? Come on, the FBI's not even involved with them.
As soon as you call the FBI and they hear the word chat line, they say, you would hang up.
That's what you call irony right here, by the way. FBI's not listening to this. They don't care about this kind of stuff.
Talk about a party line?
Yeah, the party line, that's so bad.
That's like, you click.
Come on,
you old punch you in your pacemaker, you old.
I bet she's got wooden.
So that's basically them just talking amongst themselves, right? We got some other, and these are cleaned up pretty much. Now we want to play one of the calls actually that when they call 911, right? So you kind of get this. Listen to this. This is pretty horrifying, but Chestnut Blaze?
Chestnut Blaze, yeah.
December 7th, 2004, 1 hours, 24 minutes, 1 second.
Metro Dispatch, planer rate 142.
Who the am I talking to? Who is this?
This is Metro Police.
Yeah, this is David Chester Hill. I want you to know I got a cop tied up in the bathtub right now. This is a hostage situation. I want $100,000 and I want it in the next 15 minutes.
Okay, where are you at?
4643 Chestnut Blaze Drive. I want $100,000. I want it in the next 15 minutes or this place is going to blow up.
You realize you have Metro Police and you're calling from North Las Vegas, correct?
Yes, I do. I want fucking $100,000. I want $100,000 right now.
So you understand you're in North Las Vegas, correct?
Yes, I understand.
Then I'll put you through to North Las Vegas.
Every stuff, I want $100,000.
It may sound like the Metro dispatch is callous there. However, this is not the first time he's called that night, and so they think he's basically making it up. So when they're sitting there doing that, and you'll hear when he switches to the other correct police station, they take it very seriously right away. But he's already been doing that for some time with them.
Yeah, transfer me. Well, you want me to kill this cop?
December 7th, 2004, 1 hours, 39 minutes, 2 seconds.
Metro Police, Williams, 7679.
Yeah, this is David Chester Hill, and I want $100,000. I want you to know I got a police officer tied up in my bathtub right now. If I don't get $100,000 within the next 15 minutes, I will kill this son of a... You understand me?
Where are you at?
I'm at 4643 Chestnut Blaze Drive. I will kill this guy. I've been tied up in the bathtub, poured over with gasoline. I will light this on fire. Do you understand me? I want $100,000. $100,000. Do you understand me?
You didn't hear it because it was beeped out, but somebody else on there is going, They're actually pretending to be him tied up and gagged.
Las Vegas.
You transfer me. I just talked to North Las Vegas. They won't take me serious. Give me $100,000. Are you there? What do you think is a game?
I'm listening to you. Well, first off, you don't need to use the language with me, okay? That's the first thing.
Hey, you want to send me? I will shoot this cop in his head. Do you understand me? Don't you try me. Don't you try me. I've been having a bad week, and I'm not afraid of anything. You give me my $100,000 or else it's going to die. Put me on the phone with a smart that knows what I'm talking about, because apparently you want to get this guy killed. Put somebody on the phone right now. I better have $100,000 in a briefcase. Matter of fact, I want them all in
$100,000. David, what's the officer?
All right, we'll come back. And here's the one. This is actually the blind Weigman calling right here.
And we're going to kind of go forward in it, but his claim here is that he's taken some hostages. The guy actually happens to be a TSA official. He also has called in a bomb threat to the airport where the TSA official works. And he's telling them the reason he's doing this is because the TSA officer raped his sister, and he's got them as hostages now.
One of my other dispatchers is calling over there. It's going to be a hostage situation, 729 Main Street in security.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, let me
And this
bring him
is dispatch talking internally, trying to figure out how to deal with it.
Johnny, you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay, I have the county on the phone with us now.
Hi, John?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, okay, this is Jennifer. Okay, so what exactly is going on?
I'm not talking anymore.
Okay, you can't talk?
I'm not talking anymore.
Hey, Johnny?
Like I said, I am armed.
You go back a little there.
Movies are nothing, all right? You understand that?
Okay.
And one of them here, his name is Danielle, and her father. And the reason why I'm doing this is because her father raped my sister.
Okay.
Okay? And I am armed.
Pretty good actor, isn't he?
Okay.
I am armed.
So that's Weigman right there. All right, so let's move along here. You guys got to hear some of that. So here's what happened. Here's all the victims, right? People say, well, who's involved? So they called basically all these people, right? They basically called each of these individual organizations. So hopefully your city's not up there, but.
In reality, this is, it says first responders 100 plus. By the time that we became involved in this investigation, there were over 400 police reports that these guys had generated in 5 years in over 100 counties, 100 different municipalities. That includes fire trucks, emergency response teams, SWAT, police, child protective services, everything else. We know from that those are the police reports we were able to find. Stuart had a notebook. That notebook had the phone numbers of the people he was keeping tabs on. I only found 6 months worth of his notebooks, which were 2 of them. There were 600 phone numbers in those 2 notebooks. He did this for 5 years, and that was a couple months worth of stuff. Stuart actually, this is his 4th time in jail for doing this. Again, another reason we got involved. Almost everyone in here had some kind of criminal history. Mr. Ward had done this before. He had a buddy who was getting sentenced at a courthouse, so he called in a bomb threat to the courthouse to try and get it cleared so his friend could escape. And these guys are not nice people.
And just to list some of that, you think, well, obviously the cops are responding, they're obviously impacted, but here's some of the other services that are, all your major telco providers are right here, right? So everybody's kind of involved in this. So let's talk about what happened. So a little hacker, as I mentioned, he ends up getting sentenced. He's got 11 years, right? So
11 years and change, yeah.
11 years and change. And here's the nice thing about the federal justice system, right? It's the or the federal penal system, I guess, there's no time off for good behavior, right?
No.
Yeah, you're doing the whole time, right? So there's no, hey, I got, and some of these guys taking pleas, right? So Stuart got 5 years. And we'll talk a little bit about this later. They got booked and basically sentenced in Texas, correct?
Yes.
Why is that?
Well, I mean, when you have something like this where it's distributed all over the nation, Stuart was from Ohio, a couple of the guys were from Houston, a couple of the guys were from Boston, California, all over the country. The victims are all over the country. I mean, basically, you have to pick where you're going to prosecute these guys. Usually what we try and do is do something that makes sense. Like, for example, if there's one bad guy who's ripped off 20 innocent victims, we prosecute him where the bad guy is. If there's 20 bad guys who all ripped off one victim, we prosecute him where the victim is. We try and make it make sense. But when it's something that's this distributed, you have to figure out where your best venue is. And in Texas, we basically decided it was our venue because we had victims, both people who got called, SWAT teams that got called out, law enforcement that got caught out, and telcos. These guys were using switching networks that were located in DFW because we happen to have a large telecom business there. So it made sense that even though none of the bad guys were actually in Dallas at the time, that we would prosecute them there.
And being from Texas, we can run them up there, right? We ain't playing around. So Guadalupe got 2.5. Jason ended up getting 5 years. Sleepy buddy right here, he got 5 years as well. 9 years. Why did he end up getting more?
Both Little Hacker and Madison ended up getting more with the obstruction of justice because what they did, and it says minor in there. Little Hacker started as a minor when this began. Shortly after his 18th birthday, what he started doing was retaliating against the witnesses in this case who had provided testimony against them. In particular, we had a phone company guy who'd been working with us, helping us in the security and find stuff. What they did was Carlton and Matthew called Verizon pretending to be irate customers, saying that that guy was harassing them in order to get him fired. Now, it didn't work. I mean, the phone company knew that, but they did it specifically to try and get even with him. In fact, they went so far as to show up at the phone company executive's house. You had a blind guy get driven there across state lines to go threaten him at his home on a weekend. Nobody really wants to see the bad guys show up at their house, so they did extra time for basically threatening the witness in retaliation.
Angela got 2.5. So this just kind of explains, what happened here, the kind of the timeline a little bit.
Yeah. Again, we got called actually towards the end of 2006. The Fort Worth Police Department, you see that 10/8/2006, they'd been calling into Fort Worth. They called us up and said, we don't know what's going on. Best we've got is false calls. These guys seem to really be a lot worse than that. Is there anything you guys can do? So we said, what have you got? What can you give us? And they said, well, we've had this in here in Cleburne, which is a city outside Dallas, Fort Worth. Had it in Alvarado, which is a city outside Dallas, Fort Worth. We've had it in Fort Worth. We've had it in Dallas. We're like, okay, this is pretty widespread. Let's see what else. We put out a notice to basically all the other law enforcement agencies around and said, hey, have you guys had the same stuff? They said yes, and that's where we were able to generate those 400 plus calls, complaints. So we basically brought them in 2006. Late 2006 said, okay, we know some of the people they're going after are other people on the party line. Let's go talk to them. Went and talked to them. They said, oh, yeah, well, Rosoff's in jail right now. Went to go talk to Mr. Rosoff in jail. He was in there for doing the same thing, bomb threats. He decided not to talk to us. So I said, all right, well, who else do we know physically where they're at? And it was Mr. Weigman. So I flew out to Mr. Weigman's house to talk to him and said, all right, you're a minor. Clean up your act. Tell us about what went on. Cooperate with us. You can't ever do anything bad again. Help us figure out who everybody else is. And, you're going to be in trouble, but as a minor, we'll chalk it up to being stupid, and we'll try and make a deal with you. Mr. Weigman couldn't go 3 days without doing that before he started again. In fact, Mr. Weigman, by the end of the first week, I think maybe it was 2 weeks, had tried breaking into the PBX of the United States attorney who was prosecuting him and listening to her voicemails, saved voicemails. So we basically told his attorney, he's got to stop it, get on the straight and narrow. We want to work with him, but we can't do this if he continues the criminal activity. Kept doing it, so he said, sorry, bye. I'm not working with you anymore.
And the attorney, you said, was really surprised when you guys actually said, we're going to do what we said we're going to do.
Oh yeah, they didn't really think we'd go after somebody who was both blind and a minor. But I mean, this is somebody, I mean, you guys have heard the tapes. This is not a prank. This is somebody who's endangering other people's lives by doing this kind of thing.
All right. So how do they do it? Again, they had good technology skills, right? They obviously understand PBXs and switches and things like that. Social engineering, right? We all know what social engineering is. There are plenty of sessions out there on that. They get internal employees trying to be helpful, giving them information. They learn the lingo. They're basically social engineering, pre-texting, whatever you want to call it. They had some hacking skills, but they're not like some, elite hacker guy, right? They just have some basic skills. They're able to talk their way through anything. And then they work together. They collaborate. They shared passwords. They talk about how to avoid law enforcement. So just some things to think about. All right, so that's our first case study. Anybody have any questions about Little Hacker? Just shout out. Okay.
Yes, sir. We're shortcutting slightly because I'm not giving out how they actually did it. That's a simplification for what they actually did. A lot of times, for example, without going into technically what they actually did, but they would call not the 911 number, but they would call emergency services directly, such as, let's say they would call in on the number people would use to report loud noises or something, a non-emergency number, which didn't necessarily have the same built-in protections. And in fact, you heard there Metro Dispatch. That's not the 911 operator. That's the regular officer. And so they didn't have a lot of those built-in things to do it. So that's why he's actually giving the address, phone number, everything else in that particular call.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because some of the calls, you actually hear the dispatcher saying, we have this thing that came in. They're like, well, can't you trace the call? And he said, well, we can't because we don't have that technology. Can we forward you the call? Well, you can forward us the call, but then I can't really trace it off that line because it's not an active call. So they were pretty smart. All right. So let's move along here. We're talking about just basically some of the things you can get charged with if you do the swatting. Everybody's considering it. But we really want to start talking about this guy, Ghost Exodus, because this is recent. This just happened, last summer?
Yeah. This is pretty good. Again, we're talking about real-world effects.
These are not made up. These really happened.
And actual real-world effects that happen to the victims, too. Ghost Exodus started, we basically get a phone call on Wednesday, the week before July 4th. And it's a white hat hacker who says, hey, I've been in contact with this black hat hacker, and I think this guy works for a hospital, and I think he's getting ready to do a big old DDoS from that hospital. And we're like, okay, why do you think this? And he goes, well, he's got this YouTube up there. Account, and he's videotaped himself where he brags about doing it. We're like, really? Okay.
Nice.
So, and you'll see that in a minute. But we all right. We got to do something about this. We check it out. It checks out that everything this guy said is pretty much true or accurate to the best of his belief. We find some other things like we can't let this guy endanger the hospital. So by Wednesday we'd been called. By Friday night we had arrested him. So. Really what happened in this is, and you'll see it, again, this is the trusted insider scenario. This guy ends up being a security guard at the hospital who works the 11 to 7 shift. It's really hard to protect yourself against the security guard you've hired for your building. No matter how much precaution you take, and the hospital did have good protection and good precautions, it's really overcome when the guy has an access card that lets him anywhere in the building, and he's got physical access to every single machine.
Right. All right, so this took place in Texas. This actually took place in Dallas. And again, we'll talk about his crew. We'll talk about that here in a second. So the guy's name here is going to come up. Come on.
This is, again, some of the things that alerted the white hat. This is a picture of the hospital that he was showing online, showing off that he had the access. This is the HVAC. For those of you who don't know, HVAC stands for heating, ventilation, air conditioning. He had gained access over that computer that controlled that in the hospital. For those who don't realize it, it gets to be over 100 degrees in the summer in Texas. So you have a hospital where it's hitting 100 degrees and he's turning the air conditioning off for 3 or 4 hours at a time in the middle of the summer. You can't operate on patients. You have to re-sterilize all the equipment. If the patient is vulnerable, you have to take them out. Heating, ventilation, air conditioning controls the overpressurization, which prevents infections in the hospital. So this is not, we're kidding around. This is, oh shit, it's serious.
So here we go. This is actually the screenshot. Now this kid did this and posted the screenshots on a public forum. Yeah, not real smart. Right? There's just, you can see right there, it talks about, unit off. You can actually set all that up. So here's this kid, his name's Ghost Exodus. Here's what some of the stuff he posted about himself, when people are talking about, hey, I've seen that stuff too, and he basically posted, nice. You almost can't help it, it must be done. Because, it's your fault. You're not doing the right thing to make sure you're protecting this stuff, so therefore they're going to help you by breaking this for you. So there's his name. His name is Jesse McGraw, also known as Ghost Exodus and Phantom Exodismo. He did the breach of a healthcare facility. Then he took a video of it and put it on YouTube. He did plead guilty to 2 counts of transmitting malicious code. He tried to install a bot, and his sentencing is sentenced for September 2010. So I'm going to show you guys some of his work. So this is actually him doing his little spiel. Let me get it going here.
Do this right now. Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Ghost Exodus.
Yeah, he put it to Mission Impossible. We didn't.
Infiltration. I just so happen to be the only person here. And you know what? We're going for a spin in the elevator with a card that only
Get the volume a little higher on that.
Let's say we're going to go...
You guys turn it up just a little bit.
Fourth floor. All right. What we got to do is we got to drop a bomb in. That's all we're going to do right now. And we're going to spread them around for July 4th. As you can see, I look like shit because I haven't slept in the last 3 days.
The blue you see under his collar is actually a security guard uniform. He put the hoodie on over it so he wouldn't be recognized despite showing his face.
Nice hoodie, real smart guy. All right, let me just fast forward this a little bit. We don't watch this idiot run around, do stuff here, but he gets into here and he shows his pass card and how lead he is and all this stuff. But then he actually gets in here and starts.
This is by the way, a workstation where they keep the patient records and patient treatment history.
He's putting on his gloves after he's touched the keyboard.
He's already inserted off crack into it so that he can boot into admin mode without anybody else being able to see it.
Right, so he's running a loft crack and all the other tools. Okay, so you guys get the idea, right? Piece of work. Here's another video he posted. Now this is called Response to Cassius Clay, and he actually goes out of here, and I love this. So he's wearing his guard's uniform. I think he does have a piece of tape over the name of the company. So
starting with a little Acer right here. We got the Acer inside the metal case.
Your Acer loves them using using their product.
Got this.
Showing all his cool tools.
You seen this in the picture?
And he shows his lockpick tools. Oh, I got some more stuff here.
Why is it?
Yeah, just.
You're asking why did he make these videos of himself doing this? Because everybody makes videos of themselves committing crime. To be honest, he's a script kiddie. He's very advanced.
Basically, it's pretty nice. You can also interchange the antennas for larger ones.
Cell phone jammer.
On our website, by the way.
Here we go. Fake FBI credentials.
Yes, I do
that
have
didn't really.
It's a 4 gigabyte.
Got the fake FBI credentials over there. That didn't really endear himself to the local law enforcement community. So go ahead.
No, the reason he's doing all this is because he's in a flame war with a bunch of other script kiddies, and they're saying, you really don't have this access. Oh, yeah, yes, I do. Watch. And I can post it on there so people can see it.
And he just goes on. It's just more of him talking. Yes, their videos are out there.
Credit card skimmer.
He's got skimmer. I mean, this guy is totally elite, dude. Binos. I mean, you guys ever seen Johnny Long do a presentation on all the cool stuff you got to have to be a hacker? This guy is definitely the one to have. Okay.
And he's sitting there. It's almost anticlimactic when we're showing these videos. When we arrested him, the first thing out of his mouth is, "Was this about Ghost Exodus?" And we're like, "Stop talking, please. We need to read your rights." No, really, we had to stop him. He wanted to talk. And then we get him back to our office, and we're fingerprinting him, and we're like, okay, do you want to talk to us or not talk to us? You don't have anything on me. I'm like, well, let me show you this video. And we start playing the first video. That's not me. Now, no, really, I mean, come on. Really, that's your best effort? That's not me? You've already asked us this Ghost Exodus. That's your face, right? Eventually, his excuse for this was, then, this is a reenactment. I didn't actually do it, which works really great up until the time we go to the servers And in the video, for example, you can see the clock in the background, and on the servers is where it shows Norton. It's McAfee on that one. McAfee Enterprise being uninstalled matches exactly. So all these things nicely match up, and it's like, okay, date, time, everything else.
Here's some of the ads he put on Craigslist. He's an experienced ethical hacker / PC repair. So if you guys are looking to get a hard drive swapped out or any kind of work done, great. But he does also mention that he's a security guard.
Yeah, the beautiful thing on there, you see all those security companies. Now, and this is not actually banging on those security companies. They did do a background check. He didn't have a criminal history. But each and every single one of those, he pled guilty to 2 counts to putting code on 2 different computers. Each and every single one of those places he worked, he was either let go or fired for mucking about with the computers at the places he was at. Now, mucking about's kind of a misnomer. Like the first place, let's see, Triple D, I think it was. No, I'm sorry, Allied. He's actually working there, and he's out at a data center guarding the data center. Great.
Wait, pause right there. That's probably like your data center, right? Where your company's data is.
So he's guarding the data center, and as he's sitting there, he's playing with one of the computers. Another guard comes in to relieve him, sees him playing with the computers, and reports him to the boss. The boss does not think computer intrusion, computer hacking. The boss is thinking, oh, you were not working on company time. You're supposed to be out doing your rounds, and you're playing solitaire on the computer. So he gets fired from there, but not for hacking. He doesn't get reported for hacking. Nobody talks about it because what they fire him for is not doing his job. And if you think a security guard company is sitting there thinking to themselves, oh, I got to make sure my guys aren't mucking about with data centers. No. They're thinking, are they stealing something? And by the way, yeah, he did that too. He had lost and found, so he was putting all the credit cards in his pocket from there.
There's more of his official Phantom Exodismo mess. Again, that's why I can't be a hacker, because I can't come up with a cool name. So here's his buddies. The Electronic Tribulation Army, or ETA. Now they changed it to Evolution of ETA after he got arrested. And I was going to bring up the website. The internet connection is actually down in the building right now, but I was going to bring up their website and show you, and it's the whole typical, free ghost exodus, blah, 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 whatever. He's, wrongly accused, and right, sure he is. Just the chats that are going on off their website, Anarchist Cookbook, and he talks about he will be avenged. Great. It's just, jail's got plenty of room. Just throw him in there. So that's pretty much it. That's Ghost Exodus. So this is a real deal, right? This just happened last summer, and he'll get sentenced here.
He did this right the weekend before July 4th last year, so almost a year ago exactly now. He spent about a year in jail while we were waiting to try and work something out. And I said, I don't want anybody here to commit any crimes, but if you're going to commit crimes and you're going to videotape yourself and you're going to put it to the Mission Impossible theme and post it on YouTube, when we offer you a plea deal, it is probably in your best interest to take it.
Take the deal.
No, I'm not trying to be silly about this. This is a guy who, yes, he really did endanger people's lives. He was playing about with that ventilation computer, but I kind of liken it to drunk driving, okay? He was not trying to kill the person while he was drunk. He just got behind the wheel drunk and drove home, and he accidentally hit somebody. Well, you're still in trouble because you should never have gotten behind that wheel. You should have known better. You shouldn't have done that. But he wasn't trying to kill the person. He was trying to drive drunk. Well, the same thing happens here. He was trying to hack the computers and play with it. He wasn't trying to turn off the air conditioning. But, you put on something like TeamViewer, and when you install TeamViewer or LogMeIn, it can occasionally, during the install, reset the IP addresses. So, for example, one of the places he worked, he'd installed TeamViewer, and when he was installing TeamViewer, it reset, instead of whatever IP addresses they had, back to 127.0.0.1. Okay? Unfortunately, and we're talking about things you can do to prevent stuff now here. Unfortunately, it happened to be their PBX controlling computer. The reason he chose that computer is because you had to operate as admin to run the PBX. So the computer was on, all you have to do is move the mouse and it came up and you're already in admin. Wow, that's great, I can do what I want. That happened to be for a actually television broadcasting company that did fundraisers, and that happened to be during a fundraiser, and they had 40 people sitting at a phone bank unable to answer phones for 3.5 hours because the phones were out. Now, that's a real-world impact. So again, what could you have done? Well, they had the data center locked. He had a security guard pass. He was able to get in. Could you have done some kind of password protection? Well, in theory you could have, but they didn't because they didn't control that PBX. The phone company was running that PBX. So you have this unprotected machine in your data center because they needed to run it as admin in order to be able to keep the phones running. What can you do? Well, pick different software. Tell the phone company that's not acceptable. What can you do about the security guard? Well, we hired this guy out. Maybe you have to do your own background check. Maybe you have to have an internal one. Most companies can't afford that. You're going to hire some kind of security guard company to come in and do it.
So apparently you can just monitor YouTube and wait for them to post it on that. That's also acceptable. But look at how he did it, right? So he obviously knew the technology. He's a pretty smart kid. Smart. Actually, saying smart, technically adept is probably a better word. He obviously knew the employer's computer systems because he worked there. He had plenty of time. He's the night security guard, right? What else is he doing? And he had physical access, and that's huge. And then here's what got posted on his website after he got arrested. Somebody basically called him a massive chunk of fail with a link to his actual arrest deal. Thought it was pretty funny. Apparently some of his crew didn't really appreciate that. So again, just some of the things we're learning from these, right? From the actual case studies here. First of all, old school still works, right? It doesn't have to be cutting edge, right? Bad guys are still using IRC. Now we've all moved past that. We're all, the people are now to texting and all that great stuff, right? Instant messenger. But I mean, IRC still alive and well. People use it every day. People commit crimes on it every day, right? They share that information. Party lines, right? They're still using the chat lines. Social engineering is still ongoing. It's always been a threat. So are you training your employees to yeah, everybody knows, we all know about social engineering. We're all IT guys and gals. We all understand social engineering. But do your users understand social engineering? Oh yeah, I trick them all the time. All right. But the point is do they know what to do when they're being tricked? What do they do? I see so many security. Last year I did a presentation on security awareness, right? Because everybody talks about it, and it's great that you talk about it and you understand it, but you don't, and you train your users. But what happens is when you train them, and then they say, "Uh-oh, I think I'm being socially engineered here," and they call you and say, "Hey, I went to your class on social engineering. And you told me what to look out for, and I think I'm being socially engineered." And you're like, okay, I didn't really ever think that would actually ever happen. We're not quite sure what to do now. You need to know what to do. What do you do? Right? Well, who calls who? What happens? So have that process in place. Are you monitoring things? Right? We're all, again, savvy people. Are you monitoring the threats? Okay? Are you doing, what's being put on the internet about your business? There's a huge thing now with, especially large corporations, where they're actually, it's called brand awareness. Because there's this new thing out there called brand jacking. You guys have not heard this, go Google it at home. I'm sorry, go Bing it up at home. Know your place. And look up the word brand jacking. Because people are stealing your company's brands and using it as part of, spam, things like that, or they're making calls using your company's information, right? And your company's getting the bad rep for that.
And not only that, but I am not bashing on any particular website when I say this, okay? But there's too much information about yourself, your company, everybody out there, okay? We do a demo in our own office because we have a policy. We don't have Facebook pages, okay? I'm not bashing Facebook. We don't have Facebook pages. The reason is because we don't want people knowing that much about our agents. But we have some support employees, secretaries, people who work on the cars, things like that, who don't seem to understand why it's important not to put stuff up. We do a demo, and if you haven't seen somebody do this, go watch it on any DEF CON video, for example. We pick a person out in our audience, and we say, okay, great, and we could have done it here if we had internet. Pick a person out in our audience, and we go, all right, what's your name? Okay, great. Let's see if you got a Facebook page. Yes. Okay, don't tell me what it is. Boom. We find you on Facebook. Is that you? Yes, it is. Okay, great. Here's my cross-site scripting access. Okay, now I have access to your site. I'm admin. Oh, I bet your password here is that same password that you used for your Gmail account that's hooked to your site. Oh, okay, great. I'm going to go over to your Gmail. I'm going to try that. Oh, it worked. Great. And this works about 75-80% of the time, by the way. Okay, I'm on your Gmail account now. I'm going to hit the search inside for PayPal. Oh, PayPal. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, look, here's your PayPal password. Log into your PayPal account. It takes about a minute and a half to do that.
That's a big concern. I actually do a session for like kids and stuff on online, protecting your online identity. For you guys, you're pretty much done, right? You got the picture of you in Cancun, or later on tonight in Bourbon Street. That'll picture will be on, the internet by 2 o'clock in the morning. Sadly enough, your reputation's already hosed. You can't do anything about it. But for kids, right? They're not thinking about that, right? And it's easy. If I have a Facebook account, how hard is it for me to create the old, Justin Berber account, right? Whatever. I put his picture up there. I want to add it to your teenage daughter's. I friend her, and all of a sudden, next thing I know, I have access to her information. Right, so it's really easy to do. It's really easy to spoof these people, and we're seeing more and more of that. Right, this basically stealing identities, not only personally, but as I mentioned, corporations on the brand side. Right, and your companies, believe me, talk to any of your marketing folks. Your brand is you. That is your company. Right, Microsoft is very picky about how you use the Microsoft logo, what you can and cannot say.
And you've all seen the emails. Everybody here has seen at least one of those emails where, hey, this is your bank. We need you to reset your password or whatever. And we all know it's a phishing expedition, right? Now they're going to corporations. They're targeted. They're going after the company. And they're going to the legal department of the company or the finance department of the company. And they're hoping somebody there in the company is going to do that. And while people are semi-conditioned at home not to do that, we still see a whole bunch of it. And they're not conditioned at work to ignore those kinds of phishing expeditions. And we are seeing a huge rise on corporate credentials being misused.
Yeah, we actually saw a case where a CEO, who, in case you're not familiar, CEOs, not the most technical people, where he received an email from the Department of Justice, .ru, and he basically had an attachment that said that, you were being subpoenaed. He's like, but there's a link to see to view the subpoena. And so he clicks on the link, he gets this pop-up that says, you must install subpoenareader.exe. And he's like, oh, let me get that out of there. Right? So they're doing this because it's not that they're not smart, they're not technically adept. Right? So that's the things to worry about. And I'm trying to move down to the last one here, the get physical. Right? If you lose physical control, it's game over. I always say that if I can drive up to your house or your business and take your server and put it in the back of my truck, I don't care if you're running all this great stuff. You can have all the cool stuff you want, right? But if I can steal your machine, if I can steal the SAM, I can steal the Active Directory, right? The ntds.dit files and things like that. If I can get that information, it doesn't matter. So physical security is really important. And tomorrow I actually do a session on physical security for IT. We're going to talk about the big picture IT security, right? Not just, I'm not going to be the old, lock up your desktop. Right? It's going to be bigger than that. It's going to be pretty high end. I got talk about barbed wire and fences and surveillance cameras, and we're going to talk about all that stuff and actually demo some of it tomorrow too. And that's tomorrow. And then also point out Andy Malone has a session right after mine. Yours at 9:45? At 9:45, Andy's doing a session on cybercrime as well, but you're taking more from the international aspect, right? The whole, the Eastern Europeans. So I'll just put him in that group. That pretty much cover it. The Eastern Europeans. You're Western European. So you're good. But anyway, you get the idea. All right. So what else are we talking about there? We talked about brand jacking. We talked about identity theft. Theft of trade secrets still out there.
Yeah, this isn't a hard and fast number, but over 75, probably close to 80% of our cases, honestly, criminal cases, are either corporate espionage or disgruntled ex-employee who's mad, they've been fired or feels put upon and is going to get even, or is going to start a competing company and takes the data with them, be it customer list, trade secret, whatever you want to call it. They take the information that you use to make your business run, and they take it with them to go start competing against you.
It's illegal. It's called non-disclosure. You guys all sign these things, non-compete. So these are important. And obviously things like cyber terrorism, we're not going to go into detail on that. That's a whole different section, different lecture. But you guys kind of understand that's out there, right? People are using computers now all the time. It's not just, I'm using a computer to launch an attack. Now it's a drug lord that keeps the stuff in a really popular spreadsheet, right?
Or uses Skype to communicate and try and be secure, or uses instant messages in ICQ.
Right. There's tons of stuff out there. So computers are not only being used as they're used in all the crime, not just as part of the crime or, the weapon of the crime or whatever, the mechanism of the crime. They're actually being used for everything, right? So which is why guys like Allyn are really, really busy. All right, so we got some time left here. I want to open it up for questions. Just what we see, trends, anything like that. So you guys would just head to the microphones. Any questions? No, I cannot play the actual unedited files for you. I want to come back. But great stories. But this is good stuff. Is this valuable to you guys? Is this interesting? Or and again, if you are actually a cyber criminal, please just step right over here. We'll come see you later. Or just post it on YouTube with your IP address, your name. That's also good. What's another session over?
We actually have like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean,
If you guys have any questions, feel free. Anybody got any questions? We got some. Let's see. Anybody head to the microphone? Is there more microphones here? I can't really see with the lights. Oh, no.
We feel unloved. You guys.
Okay, question right here, right in the back. Fire it up.
I'll just scream real loud.
Okay.
911 swatters. Before I got to IT, I worked in 911 a long time ago. Now they're not coming up on the A and I, right?
No, they're spoofing CLID, not ANI. Again, I didn't really want to go too far into it because I'm not trying to teach a course on how to commit the crime.
Right. How to commit fraud.
No, they're basically stuck with CLID. But remember, nowadays with everybody, basically, if you're running a Linux server, I mean, you can have your own PBX in your house and put whatever CLID you want. So
here. Questions. None? Yeah, right here.
How much of the crime that you see is kind of low-level social engineering, like steal your password, compared to more high-tech?
Michael Weston kind of crimes?
It really depends. I mean, because there's different ways of measuring that. There's volume and then there's damages. Okay, we are seeing hundreds of thousands of identities being stolen on a regular basis. In fact, they're selling them, and you'll probably hear it tomorrow if you attend Andy's conference or speech. We see them being 40 cents a pop for an identity on Facebook. And why do people want Facebook identities? Because they're going to send out spam with your Facebook identity. They're going to send out viruses with your Facebook identity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We see hundreds of thousands of those. I mean, that's a large amount, but is it really doing a lot of damage? I don't know. Whereas we see with the people who are very technically adept and the higher tech crimes, they steal 20 million at a time, 30 million, 40 million. Not being silly about it, the largest dollar loss I've ever had. We had somebody who stole credit cards from a credit card processing company, not the actual end user, but not the bank, but from the credit card processing company in between. They took 4.5 million credit cards valued at about $5 billion. So I mean, that's easy. It's one hit, one intrusion, took it all. That's major, but so I really don't know how to answer that except to say that it depends how you're measuring it.
Yeah, I would say this too. Like, my company, we do like social engineering exercise, facility breaches and things. But I'll be honest, like most companies, we also do like the white hat pen testing and a lot of companies do that kind of stuff. But what I find interesting is that we always have a hard time like convincing companies to go to do the social engineering exercises. Do you know why that is? Anybody want to guess why that is? Yeah, because they know they're going to fail. Right? We actually had a case where a bank called us and said, "Can you come out here and see if you can get to our data center?" And like 30 minutes, we were inside the vault. Right? So it's not like all cool Ocean's 11 or anything like that, right? We just walked in and they're like, "Who are you?" "I'm the IT guy." "Sweet, come on in." It was a branch office. We walked in and then we couldn't get in the vault because you had to have the swipe card, right? Or whatever to get. It was actually the data center, not the vault. The vault, stays open in the back. But couldn't get in. We didn't have a pass card because it was a total, black box, basically social engineering attack. And what happened is when the guy's doing it, the manager of the branch comes up to him and goes, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm from corporate IT. I'm here to check stuff and the computer stuff." She's like, "Well, you can't get in there. You need a pass card." He's like, "Oh." She goes, "Here, use mine." And so he had that card for the next 6 hours. He took a picture of himself in the data center. Took a picture of himself in the vault. Right? No questions asked. That was great. I mean, it's fun.
We had a question over there on the left.
Yeah, right here.
We see a ton of that. Right now, the biggest emerging one we're seeing is instead of phishing attacks, we call them vishing, which are voicemail phishing.
Yeah, can you repeat the question?
I'm sorry. The question was what are you seeing in the banking industry? Are we seeing phishing attacks, things like that, just regular fraud? We are seeing it again. Like I said, it's moved to the corporate for the emails, and then as far as the individuals, now what they do is they look for little local banks like in Texas, they'll look for First National Bank of Dallas, and then they'll basically hit all the phone numbers in there. They'll robo-dial all the phone numbers, same as sending out a spam message, but they'll do it with voicemail. And they'll say, hey, we've had reports of security breaches, same exact email, but they're saying it. Please call this number. And then when you call that number, it's some IP number, and it's really not a phone anywhere, and it's a recording that says, leave your account number and your name and your password, and we will get back to you if there's been a problem. And sure enough, there's always people who do it. We're seeing a lot of that on the rise.
Right.
And again, the corporate is probably the more larger amounts, the more extensive damages on the corporate side. And there's still always the same stuff where it's, again, everybody's seen it, the monster fraud. Hey, we need somebody to stuff envelopes for us for, $2,000. Oh, hey, just mail it to Lagos. Or, again, the check's coming in and go deposit the check. The check's for more, send us the amount back. They're all bad checks. And we just see tons of that. Still, you think people would learn, but they don't.
Yeah, and it goes back to like the phishing, the voice over IP phishing, essentially. It's all about awareness, right? Because we've done such a great job of beating the heads of our users, telling them, do not click at the emails from people you do not know. What about phone calls from people you don't know? Right? What if they get well, nobody actually told me that I could be phished over my cell phone or call me at the office and do that. Right? It's just simple confidence games. It's con games. That's all it is. Right? But people really starting to lose sight of that. And so you always tell them, call the number you know for your bank. Don't call the number that shows up in an email to your bank.
And the bad guys are real quick about it too. We got the first report of the false BP oil spill fund, and that you're a victim of the BP oil fund or oil spill. You should give us your bank and your personal information to this link, and you will be eligible for your legal settlement. We got the reports of that 18 hours after the spill.
I'll be honest. So just one quick thing here. So you guys all know that up until January I was at Microsoft, right, and didn't want to move to Seattle. So here I am. But literally, when I was speaking at an event from Microsoft, I had somebody come up to me and said, "I got an email from Bill Gates, and I sent in my money. When do I get my check?" And I'm like, "You have got to be kidding." This is an older lady, and she was dead serious. And what did I tell her? Hey, here's Bill's number. Call it. Right? I don't know. I mean, talk downstairs to the info people. They can help you. Okay, one more question right here. Yep.
Just a couple of questions. The first one is biometrics in the corporate environment. Is it a toy? Is it good? And the second is, we've all now have 50 different passwords for different sites. Do you have any recommendations for how to handle that as a best practice?
Yes. Let me actually talk about the biometrics for a second, and I'm not talking about biometrics per se, and I'll let him do that, but I'm going to answer the question kind of differently. There's been tons of studies now, okay? And what it basically says in all these studies is your first security measure, if properly implemented, and again, if properly implemented is key on this, adds 70% security. Your second security measure adds 70% of that remaining 30%. Your third security measure, and so on and so forth. By the time you've put in your third security measure, the marginal risk reduction versus the cost is often not worth it. But that's something that your corporation has to decide, or you have to decide, if the head of the corporation, you have to do a risk analysis and say, okay, am I willing to spend that money to protect whatever this asset is? But it doesn't seem to matter which security measure you put in place. It's just the security measure. Now, having said that, I'm going to answer about biometrics, but it's and the other part of that, really, like I said, is implementing it properly. Because a lot of people just get the thing and they don't ever use it properly.
I think biometrics is great. Let's be honest, most of the stuff is being mandated by, HIPAA or by, SOX or something like that. So a lot of companies are doing it because of that, right? Not because it's the smart thing to do, just because, hey, I think this will meet my SOX requirement. It won't. Or PCI says it doesn't. But people convince you, consultants will convince you need that, right? But there's other things besides biometrics. I mean, multi-factor authentication is phenomenal. I don't care what it is. Right? I would probably go smart card and PIN before I'd worry about biometrics. Because people want to get the cool NSA, freaking retina scanner and the hand palm geometry thing. Dude, seriously? You're sharing passwords, right? So let's stop that first, and then move on to the cool, sexy stuff. As far as the passwords and multiple passwords, you're right. There are single sign-ons. And by the way, if you haven't heard this, this is always the year of single sign-on, right? This is the year, baby. We're taking it to the house this time. Single sign-on this year. Never happens, right? But you definitely want to look at something like that. Great, again, goes back to a smart card and a PIN. You know, that kind of helps with the whole password thing. But what happens is if you're going to do this, and let me be very clear on this so everybody captures my full statement. We had a friend of mine get in trouble for saying this. If you're going to write your passwords down, you need to lock them up strongly. I see guys all the time, they'll take I got these high-end server racks, and they got these really nice locks on them, and the big cipher lock and all this cool stuff, and big old monster keys and all that stuff. Great. And a key and a lock inside a lock inside a lock. What do? Leave the keys on their desk. Right? Or they take their high-end, locks and they put it inside their desk drawer. It's got a lock on it. Right. Well, you're done. Right? So let's be smart about it. Right? And that's the same with the passwords. And if you want to get a tool that will actually save your password, that's great. But again, just be careful, right? Because nothing is 100% risk-free.
And there's really a downside, too. And I say this from personal experience. Everybody who's sitting here still may remember the old Get Smart where you watch them go through all the doors closing and he falls down. Okay. To get into my building and to sit at my desk, I have to go through 8 locks before I get there. I have 2 RFID cards, different cards, and I have a passphrase to go with each one. And when I log into my machine, I have a different passphrase. And by the time I'm done, I have to know, just to log in to do my job, I have to know 2 different passphrases or PIN codes and 4 different passwords. And they can't be the same. And they change them on us every 90 days. And they have to be at least 8 digits long, numbers, upper, lower case, special characters. Okay? I can do it, but I know for a fact that there's a lot of people who can't. And what they end up doing, because if we write them down, we get fired, they end up saying, I don't need to use that system because I can't remember the password for it.
All right, we got a question over here.
Are you familiar with the Julia Merrill case?
I'm not.
No.
She was the teacher, I think, in Connecticut.
They had found porn on her machine, but it wasn't her, so they had to fire her best.
So are you seeing a trend where IT administrators as well as users are being falsely convicted?
We're seeing it actually both ways. And I actually had this conversation with somebody else. Child porn in particular. We've gone out to houses where the IP address led us to, and the guy actually did have an unsecured wireless network, and he didn't know it was actually his neighbor who was doing it. And we've had guys where we go to the house and he says, I have an unsecured wireless network. It wasn't me, it was my neighbor. And no, he's got web enabled and he's got Mac authentication on his router, and no, it's not really, So we've seen it both ways.
So what you're saying is, just to be clear,
yeah.
The trend is increasing where you're convicting or
No. Convicting is a bad word. Convicting is not the right word. Where investigations are leading us to the wrong person, and then we have to continue investigating afterwards, yes. But convicting, no. We don't go after prosecuting somebody until we're, again, that example, not that particular one, but the ones where we're taking it, we go and we look at the computer and there's no child porn on it. Well, it's the wrong computer. Clearly the IP address may be right, but there's got to be somebody else in that wireless network or on the router or whatever doing it.
Let me just give you guys a quick summary of the case. What happened was a school teacher, they basically arrested her or said, they fired her for saying that you had porn on your machine. She's like, I didn't put any porn on there. It wasn't me, right? And it turns out it wasn't her. And so they actually called in a third-party forensic investigator. I think a bunch of volunteers stepped up, right?
Police department.
Okay, right. They stepped up and said, we'll do the forensic analysis, and it turns out it wasn't her.
It was a police officer who took a 4-hour training class who was the expert witness for it.
Right, but basically they proved exculpatory thing. You know what? This was on her before she ever got the machine or something like that, or somebody put it on here for her.
She was convicted. She lost her teaching credential. And it took her 4 or 5 years before her case was overturned. The outcome was she had to surrender her teaching credential and never teach again. She has lost her livelihood. There have been other IT administrators who have been falsely accused, and they've been terminated because, again, stuff was found on their machines.
Again, I can't talk to state and locals because, again, it's different in every place. But I know when we go in, for example, we make it very clear if it's in a corporate thing. First of all, that if we're asking for information or doing a search or whatever, we sit there and say, look, nobody's been accused yet. There's no arrest warrants. There's no convictions. We're going to do our investigation. This is a step in gathering information on it. We tell people you cannot make any personnel decisions based on us coming in. If you would have done something normally on your own, hey, That's not, because a lot of companies, if there's even an internal investigation, they're going to suspend somebody or whatever. We're like, do whatever your normal personnel procedures are. We're not asking or directing or requesting you do anything differently than you would normally do. Now, having said that, like I said, I know from my personal experience and in my office, yes, there have been cases of that IP address doesn't come back to that person who's got the physical device in their house. But increasing, decreasing, convictions, no. I mean, I cannot think of, in my 12 years of doing this for the FBI, one time, and I will say this, one time in our office we had somebody report a crime and actually manufacture logs so that it looked like it was the other person, and it was the first person framing the second person. We ended up with the person who was framing, not the person who was being framed, being convicted. So, I mean, we don't get to the point where we convict somebody until we're sure it's for the right person. Now, I can't say that's true for everywhere, every organization, but we make really sure we're going after the person we really believe did the crime.
All right, got one more question right here. Yep.
You were talking about, like, you know, action plans for, like, when you're being social engineered or...
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Yeah, I can't hear you. Can you get the microphone just so we can... You got to capture it for the recording.
So if you're being, like, social engineered or hacked, you know, what would be a good action plan? Like, you don't just call the police or 911, right?
No, I think you got to validate it. I mean, you want to know what's going on. I would definitely get law enforcement. I always say this: anything you think it might be, potentially could be, slightly be a crime, call law enforcement. And it's not even I call the FBI, I call Secret Service, I call my local law. Call somebody. Get them involved early, because then if you call the FBI and it's not, you know, they have certain requirements before they can take a case. But call somebody, because if it's not, they can tell you where to go. Right? So it's always get them involved early on. Too often we see, like in forensics cases, it's the IT guy, I'll blow away the drive. Right? It's got malware on, I'll blow it away. Great, there goes all that data. Or they blow it away, they mess around with it, and then 30 days later they're like, man, I should have called that law enforcement. Now I'll call them. Hey, I got this drive I re-imaged. Great. Thank you.
And along the same lines, and part of your action plan really should be, most people don't log phone calls, don't log a lot of stuff. Okay, that should be being logged. Anything, if there was video from that day, somebody came to the front of the building and did it, almost everybody's video logs, for example, their video surveillance, rolls over. You know, first in, first out after 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever it is. Preserve it. I mean, you know, the things like that as far as an action plan is you think you're being socially engineered, preserve the evidence that would tend to either corroborate or exonerate. Because if it's not social engineering, we don't want to go after somebody either. Preserve the evidence.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like I say, it's part of your incident response plan, right? What happens is a lot of times, you guys, same with malware, right? You do the whole big spiel about, you know, hey, this is what it looks like, viruses, blah, blah, blah. And somebody gets infected and they're like, call the IT, hey, I think I got a virus. And you're like, what? What do you mean? What? No, that can't be happening. We run an enterprise edition of our antivirus. There's no way you could have got a virus. I think I did. Uh-oh, now you're like, hold on a second. What do we do now? Right? So, again, it's part of your IR plan. That's all it is. All right. I think we're out of time, guys. Thank you so much again. Allyn, a big hand for showing up today.
Thanks for coming.